Hey everybody, welcome back. This is going to be part 4 of What If Luffy Had the Storm Fruit. And with no recaps, no anything of that sort, no telling you to subscribe, let's just get right into part 4. Realizing the direction of the ship, the two bounty hunting brothers would nervously walk up to Luffy and ask them what exactly his destination is at this moment. Luffy, looking at them calmly, would simply answer them truthfully, and he would simply say that they are going to pay Arlong a visit. Them, getting even more nervous at this point, say, Big Bro Luffy, we know you're powerful, but Arlong is on a completely different scale. Have you heard of Jimbei? And, he explains, the whole deal that he had with the world government and everything of that sort, and Luffy would simply say that it doesn't matter because that's Nami's hometown, and he promised her that he would go there. And so they, instantly realizing why he's going to this location in the first place, would not really have any further complaint, and neither would the crew. They would all go there with a determined look in their eyes, and Nami would smile at this, realizing that this entire crew, not just the captain, had her back, and even the people that were just traveling with them temporarily. And so they continue to sail towards Arlong Park, in the hometown of Nami. And so we see a little bit of a time skip until it's the next night, and once again Luffy is basically just sitting on top of the Mary's head, looking into the distance. He is lost in thoughts and doesn't really recognize anything that's going on around him, completely distracted and trusting that, his crew isn't going to try to backstab him or anything of that sort. And he would get startled out of his thoughts by Nami, who was behind him, who spoke for the first time, basically, in that entire day to Luffy, and she simply says, "Thank you for going there. I know it was a lot to ask," and before she could even continue, Luffy would cut her off and say, "It's not a lot to ask. Like I said before to you, I would do this for you, I would do this for any of my crew," and Luffy has been thinking about it for a little bit now, about how he reacted to Don Krieg calling her a whore, and he was thinking about why it was that he reacted like that, and as he looks at Nami, a small blush would come up over his face. Yes, you can basically guess now what the ship is going to be. And so he would continue to look at Nami until he asks her a fairly simple question. "Now that we've been sailing together for a while, what do you think of me?" Going back to his question from a couple episodes ago about when he first had Nami join him, about trying to prove that not all pirates were the same. And Nami would answer just the same, with a very simple line. And she would say to him that he's not like most pirates. He's almost like some kind of anomaly between a pirate and a marine, because he's not really doing anything that he doesn't want to do, but at the same time, he's not going around pillaging, raping, and everything of that sort. Basically, he's in that in-between line where he has his freedom, but he also doesn't let any of the power that he has get to his head, and he doesn't really want to try to push people beneath him, because he views everybody as free, and that includes himself. Luffy would nod at this, saying that that's actually a pretty accurate, way of putting it in terms of how he views himself, and he would ask Nami something else, and that would be whether or not she was going to continue sailing with them after they defeated Arlong and were going to leave. Nami would look at him surprised that he even asked that question, and she simply smiles at him and says, "Well, of course I'm going to be coming with you. This kind of just feels like my home now. With you," she would say with a slight blush on her face. Luffy, realizing the tone that she just said that with, and also having been looking at her this entire time, would jump off of the Mary's head and would be standing in front of her. He looks at her and says, "Well, we can discuss about the future after we deal with the current situation." Because he doesn't, okay, Luffy is understanding of things in this whatever, he's not a complete and utter, idiot when it comes to, romance and things like that, but he, at the same time, he is also the average guy in terms of being nervous about trying to make the first move or something of that sort. So he just decides to basically just hold it off until later, And so, once again, everybody would go back to bed, and you'd have another time skip until the next morning when they are arriving at Arlong Park. And so, as they arrive at the park, like they are not even stopping at the island, they are straight up just sailing straight through the gates of the park itself, and of course, a couple of fishmen would be beneath the water. Luffy, being able to actually kind of use his observation hockey at will at this point, would obviously sense them because he's on guard around this, enemy territory, would simply tell Sanji to deal with them, knowing that he was the best swimmer and also that he had the strongest legs. And so, jumping under the water, Sanji would kick them out. Basically, okay, Sanji probably wouldn't be able to do that with, one of the commanders of the pirates while he was underwater, but with, random fishmen, even if they are 10 times stronger than humans, and they get a boost underwater, where humans get kind of like a debuff effect, I guess you could say, where, they have the water resistance to deal with, so they're a lot slower, he would still be pretty easily able to deal with them and jumps back on board. And we see them sailing through the gates after completely and utterly destroying them, and they arrive in front of the Arlong pirates that are all gathered up in front of them, wondering exactly what these mere humans were doing. Nami, being curious about whether or not Arlong would honor her deal or not even worried about what would happen in the aftermath, would walk up to the front of the ship and tell Arlong that she has finally finished gathering all of the money. Arlong would give her a little bit of a devious smile, or, a little bit of a wrathful one. I don't know exactly how to describe the smile that Arlong has when it comes to looking at people, even including Nami, who's on his crew, and would say that if she can, right now, bring it all to him, then he would let her buy the village. And, of course, he already knows that he has bought off the Marines to, get all of the money that she had saved up so far. And so we see Nami heading off towards where her and Nochiko would have lived. And of course, she finds out the story behind what actually happened, and we see Luffy and company just kind of sitting on the ship waiting for the developments to start happening and seeing what exactly was going to go on. So we see Nami sprinting back towards Arlong Park, and as she arrives, she starts yelling at Arlong, who would give her a little bit of a grin and say, "Well, I didn't actually break any of my promises. I simply told you you had to bring me all of the money at a single time, and you can't do that, now can you?" Luffy, at this point, getting completely enraged by what Arlong was saying, because, again, he knows the entire backstory of Nami at this point, would disappear in a flash and reappear in front of Arlong before slamming his fist into his face, sending him flying throughout park and into the wall on the opposite side. All of the fishmen around him would yell out his name and start attacking Luffy, but this is where Zoro and Sanji would come in, blocking the two commanders, or the two high-ranking members of his crew, whereas the rest of his crew would begin to deal with, the rest of them, or I guess the rest of his crew being Usopp, so that one really works. I'm just gonna go with the fact that he can use Conqueror's Haki here, and so those 3 or 4, because I guess you have to include Chu in this, where Usopp fought him in the original, and so the rest of the crew would get knocked out except for those 4 fishmen. And so we see the individual fights happening as Luffy would sit down on Arlong's throne, looking over at the piece of wall that got broken out as Arlong sits up. He looks over at the mere human that is sitting down on the throne that is rightfully his, and he would get enraged as he charges towards Luffy, saying, boasting about the might of the fishmen, and they are 10 times better than them in every way, as he charges towards him. Luffy, getting kind of annoyed by his rant, would simply appear in front of him, as a lightning blade would start to materialize out of his lightning. Because again, I kind of mentioned that in the last part, that Luffy can materialize weapons out of his lightning. And this time it would be a sword, as he would slash downwards, and completely not only cut off one of Arlong's arm, but also cauterize the wound that, would have been there in the first place. So he's not even bleeding. He's not even doing any of that. As Arlong, reacts to this, obviously, he pulls his arm out and starts holding on his arm, and it's just screaming in absolute, basically, insanity at this point, because he cannot fathom a human being this powerful, would be muttering in his delirium, and he would be basically saying that a human did this. A human who is beneath them has managed to do this, and he would still be of the thought that he is better than Luffy at this point, and he would look at Luffy with complete and utterly crazed eyes. And Luffy, of course, noticing this, would simply brandish his sword and basically say, "Come, let's continue this fight," or finish it, if you ask exactly what he meant by that. And so, Arlong would once again charge towards Luffy, but this time, Luffy is wanting to play with him. He is wanting to torture him, and he is wanting to make Arlong pay for everything that he has done so far. So, he would disappear to Arlong's side, or Arlong would see a flash, and holding his hand up to his head, he realizes that his entire nose is gone, cut off by Luffy's sword. Luffy would once again slash and cut off Arlong's hand. Not his entire arm, but just his hand. And with a series of slashes, Arlong falls down to the ground, completely and utterly immobile. He can't move a single muscle, and he's wondering why that is, till he realizes it. He doesn't have legs, he doesn't have arms, and Luffy had completely paralyzed him by breaking his entire spine. It was basically the entire spine was pulverized into nothingness. So, looking down at him with a glare, Luffy would say, "What did you do?" Arlong, wondering what exactly he just meant by that, but still kind of in a craze at this point, would just be yelling complete and utter nonsense because of all the pain that he is in. He is quite literally, like, if you thought Arlong was going insane in the original when he was getting defeated by Luffy, in this what if, like, he is hysterical. He cannot even, like, mouth his words at this point. He is just yelling, and he can't really even comprehend what Luffy is saying, and we see Nami walk up. She simply tells Luffy to finish it. All of his other crewmates have. Usopp was back. Zoro had managed pretty easily to, because again, like, Zoro is pretty damn strong, and he's been doing observation training with Luffy, along with Sanji in the basically time that they spent trying to go to the island. And of course, Sanji is not as good as the other two, who have had a little bit more time to train with it, especially Luffy, who was basically trying to get the concept of it when he was still on the island where he set sail from. So they each managed to defeat their opponents fairly easily. And so we see Luffy once again brandishing his sword as he looks down at Arlong with a glare before slashing one last time as Arlong's head would fall off of his body. And so Arlong is dead. This isn't like some weird thing where, like, oh, he'll come back with revenge with, like, mechanical body parts. No, he's dead. He's gone. So I don't know why they even, like, left him alive in the original. Like, he hasn't done a single thing except maybe he's in, like, slavery or something now. I don't really understand that in the first place. I just don't really see Luffy, like, letting him live, but it's whatever, I guess. And so we see this scene playing out as the villagers would arrive in their mob, and they see the complete and utter decimation of the entire Arlong pirates. Nami would look up at the Arlong Park in and of itself, and would nudge Luffy, and Luffy would look over at her inquisitively and ask, what's up? And she would point at the basically giant tower that's looming in front of them, and motion for Luffy to get rid of it. So, Luffy grinning, because this is the first time, basically, since when Sabo got kidnapped, or not Sabo got, killed in front of him, and he thought that that's what happened, that he has even used his red lightning. And that's exactly what he's going to do. Red sparks would begin to flicker on Luffy's hand as he rises it up into the air. And this time, he's going to be using the Red Kiri, the Red Lightning Dragon. And so, motioning downwards, the giant dragon would roar into the sky and would slam down in the blink of an eye on top of Arlong Park, and it would completely and utterly explode. There would be nothing left on the ground but a crater. And this is where the Captain Nezumi, I think his name is, would arrive, and would be basically boasting about him being the captain of the Marine branch that he was in. They can't do anything to him, and he's going to be taking credit for this, and also that he was going to be... You know how Captain Izumi was in the original. He was just a complete and utter arrogant prick, so Luffy getting annoyed by him would simply point his finger at him, sending a little bit of an electric charge at him and completely and utterly knocking him out unconscious. He wasn't completely pissed at this point. He had let out a lot of the anger that he had been building up over the last couple of days, and so he simply decides to knock him out in order not to get more of the Marines' attention before he got to the Grand Line, because he also knows that he is going to be having to go to Log Town before this kind of thing would happen. And so, once again, we see them about to set sail. Everybody was on board except for Nami, and so we see them just kind of sitting around waiting until they hear a yell. "Set sail," Nami would say. Luffy, looking at her kind of inquisitively, wondering exactly what she was going to be doing, would simply grin after realizing exactly what was going to happen, and he tells his crew, "You heard her. Set sail. We're going. We're leaving. Right now." So, dropping the sail, they would begin to sail away from the harbor that they were at. And at that moment, Nami would begin to run. She'd be streaking and running through the crowd of villagers, seemingly not doing anything except for running through them. And as she reaches the end of the dock, all of the villagers would be yelling at her to stop, that they need to say goodbye, they need to talk. Except she jumps. As she leaps, she lands on the rail of the Mary before hopping down onto the deck and lifting up her shirt, as a bunch of wallets and a bunch of cash would begin to fall out. And noticing this, they would all begin to basically be yelling at her that they got him again, and they'd be all crying tears of mixed with happiness and anguish, as they'd be telling her to enjoy her life, to have fun. And Genzo, the basically man, because I guess I really never mentioned this, but he'd be asking Luffy to keep his promise. Luffy would simply look at him with a grin and decide not to just say it with his words, but he would do it with a little bit of a show. Red lightning would spark on Luffy's hand as he shoots it up into the air, making something akin to fireworks spread out. It wasn't actually fireworks, it was lightning, but it would basically look just like a spectacle. And so, Genzo, realizing that Luffy heard his words and also acknowledged them, would simply give him a little bit of a smile, because Luffy would be keeping Nami's smile. And so, they set sail towards their next new island, which is obviously going to be Log Town. So as they're sailing off into the distance, we once again see a scene. Luffy, actually being able to sleep this time, would be sitting on the captain's quarters, which wasn't a thing in the original. It was basically like a guy's and a girl's room, but I'm going to be, making this for the convenience, I guess you could say. And he hears a knock on his door. Getting up and already realizing who it is because of his observation haki, he would walk up to the door after throwing on a shirt pretty quickly, and he would open the door, and obviously we would see Nami on the other side of it. And she asks if she can come in. Luffy would simply nod at her, and motioning her to enter, Luffy would go and sit on the end of his bed, and Nami would do the same. Tears starting to come out of her eyes, Nami would look over at Luffy and would give him a big happy smile and tell him that, she's really grateful for everything that he has done so far. Really grateful for everything that Luffy is. Luffy, giving her a bit of a, cheesy, wide smile, would simply say that it was nothing, and he would do it over again, and as many times as it took, that got her that smile that he's seeing right now. Nami, getting a bit of a blush along with a happy smile, would jump at Luffy, giving him a hug, before, after a while, they would begin to separate. However, looking into each other's eyes, something seems to spark in between them, and no, it is not Luffy's Devil Fruit powers. And so, starting to move in closer, they would both share their first kiss. After a while, they would separate, with a strand of saliva basically going in between them, and Nami would blush madly along with Luffy, and she would start to apologize, saying that she might not have, basically been, she didn't know if Luffy would accept her feelings or not. but Luffy would cut her off mid-sentence of her trying to apologize and would begin a hot and steamy makeout session, and they would continue to do this for a while until some clothes would be removed and they would be doing some things that probably aren't really meant for YouTube, and I don't really feel like going over them. So use your own imagination to, describe this scene in front of you until they basically would end up going to bed with sweat rolling down their bodies, cuddling in the night in Luffy's captain's quarters. And so we see the next morning coming. As the rays of the warm sun would wake them up, they would both open their eyes at the same time, and they would look over at each other and give each other a warm smile. And something I should mention, if enough of you, or if even one of you, because, there's only like freaking 3 comments on my videos nowadays because I went for like a year and a half without fucking uploading. If enough, or if like even one of you comments that you want me to make a video on, like some like Luffy x Nami scene, I'll do it. But I don't really want to do it. But I will do it. It's just kind of awkward to like say that, but I will do it. But anyway, let's just continue with the what if. As they wake up in the morning, getting out, and they happen to be the first ones awake, which is good for Luffy, because if Sanji saw Nami walking out of Luffy's room, he would completely and utterly flip out and probably try to beat the shit out of him, which wouldn't really work, but, for the sake of the story, we'll go with that. And so we see all of the Straw Hats gathering to have breakfast, made obviously by Sanji. And of course, enjoying this wonderful meal, Nami and Luffy would basically be sitting right next to each other, holding hands and cuddling a little bit. And of course, the rest of the crew would notice this, especially Sanji, and he would have a dark cloud over his head with tears coming out of his eyes, saying that Luffy was the luckiest man in the world, but he might be able to get the next one. And so they continue to sail off into the sea, which eventually they would arrive at Logtown. And it wouldn't even take that long because of all of Luffy's Stealth Fruit powers, not only having been empowered over time, but also, when Luffy first learned how to utilize the wind, he would be able to make it to this island very quickly, because it's not like he can use, like, a massive gust of wind to sail them into that direction, because their ship really isn't that incredibly durable, as we sadly know in the future arcs of One Piece. But anywho, they arrive at Logtown not too, much later. And so we see them arriving there, and Zoro would realize that he needs more swords and would ask Nami for a little bit of money to be able to purchase one. Nami, giving a little bit of a devious smile, would say that of course that he can do that, it'll just be at 300% interest. Realizing that Nami was doing something that could honestly hamper the crew in the future, would look at her and say that she should just give Zoro the money, because if any of the crew members have basically, they're not strong enough, or if they have weapons that are below par, they will eventually just kind of die. And Nami, realizing that Luffy is right, and if they're not fully prepared for where they are going because they are about to enter the Grand Line, she would reluctantly nod her head and agree with him. Zoro, giving his captain a grin and a little bit of a thanks, would get his money and would start trying to find somewhere to buy swords. Sanji would be doing a similar thing, except not with swords, but with food, and we all know how that goes. He basically runs off and tries to find the nearest woman and starts to basically fawn over them. Usopp, going to try to get more accessories and various different things to tinker with, would go, to those kind of locations, as Luffy would go and try to find the execution stand, trying to see what it was that Roger had seen in the last moments of his life. And so, as we see Luffy wandering around, not really knowing exactly where to go, he would get a little bit deviated from his path when he sees a clothing shop that's a little bit different from the rest, because the advertising on the outside was a captain's cloak, or, something of that sort. So, walking into it, because he's always wanted something like that, he would see a old lady that is basically manning the cashier. And so, walking up, Luffy would ask if she had anything of the sort that, could work like that. Instantly recognizing him because Luffy had got a bounty now. And we are going to discuss that bounty right now. There is a bounty over on the wall behind Luffy as we cut to Marine headquarters. As Sengoku walks into Garp's office, he would begin yelling that his grandson had done something. Garp, realizing it was about that time, would ask what exactly happened, and he would begin explaining that he has decimated all of the high-name, or big-name pirates in the East Blue, and also had a devil fruit power. Garp, realizing that he kind of forgot to mention that to Sengoku, that, he had a devil fruit, would simply laugh nervously and decide not to mention it because, Sengoku doesn't, what he doesn't know won't hurt him. And so they would begin discussing the bounty, not with Garp, obviously, but with various marine, vice admirals and such in a room. There is a pirate captain that is in the east that is much stronger than any of the marines that we have there, and we can't really do anything about him. The only one who even stands a chance is Smoker, and that's just because of his Logia. But he has a Logia too, so he can't even stop him, he would just be able to stall him. So this discussion would continue to go on until Sengoku would speak up, saying that he has come to a conclusion about Luffy's bounty. And no, it is not going to be 30 million. The captain of the Storm Pirates, Straw Hat Luffy, after everything that he has done along with his Devil Fruit, will be given a bounty of 100 million berry. And so we cut back to, what is actually happening in the present time, as we see the old lady kind of smiling at Luffy, realizing exactly who he is, and would start to begin work on his cloak, or his coat. And so, this is where we see him get his coat for the first time. And what exactly is it going to look like? It is going to be a blue cloak, or that is wrong. There's going to be a white cloak with blue flames running down the bottoms and edges of it, with a symbol of their own pirate flag straight on the back in the middle. And so, Luffy, donning his cloak, would pay the lady and say thanks. And so, after leaving, the old woman would give the closing door a bit of a smile, saying that maybe there are, good upcoming pirates that are even coming from the east as well. And so we see Luffy, once he arrives at the stage center, as he jumps up to the top. And he's looking around, seeing the views as a marine or policeman, I can't remember exactly who, would be yelling at him to get down. Luffy simply ignoring him. However, we are not going to see Buggy or Alvida here, because Buggy is fucking dead. In case you remember that happening, Buggy is dead, he's gone. And Alvida, not really having any crew members, nor having any allies, would not even realize where Luffy is, let alone have the manpower to think that she can have any chance against somebody with 100 million berry bounty. So, Luffy would simply be standing up there until Captain Smoker and the Marines would surround the entire plaza. Looking over at this scene in front of him, Luffy would realize that it's probably about time he left, and so he would give the captain, that he can obviously see, a little bit of a wave, as he would appear in front of him and say, "Hey, who are you?" Smoker, not really even humoring his request, would simply try to swing his staff at him, his Sea Prism stone-tipped staff, and of course Luffy would dodge it, as he would grab the base of the staff and start to inspect the tip of it and say, "Oh, you got quite the weaponry you got here. I think I might take it," as he grabs the staff, ripping it straight out of Smoker's hand, and once again disappearing in a bolt of lightning, as he appears next to the rest of his crew. And so they would begin to leave Logtown. As they begin to set sail once they get to their ship, basically, they're kind of fine at this point. They didn't make as much of a scene, and Smoker, being on the complete other side of the island at this point, because, they didn't really have to try to chase after Luffy in this what if, they would set sail, and using Luffy's wind power, they would completely and utterly outrun everybody, as a storm would be coming in behind them. And so they completely, they don't really have to deal with the Marines at all, like, period. And they would just set sail. As Nami begins explaining what the entrance of the Grand Line was, and it's supposed to be some giant mountain that somehow flowed upwards, nobody would really believe her until they saw it right in front of them. A giant stream that flows straight up. So using the rudder to try and, guide them, the rudder would break. Usopp would completely shatter it, trying to push on it, and this is where Luffy would come in using his wind powers. He would guide the sides of the ship in the right direction, and they would pretty easily be able to start sailing up it. So, as they're about to sail up it, Sanji would pull out a barrel. He'd stick his foot up on it and say, "It's time we basically made our dreams known, and we say exactly what it is we're going to the Grand Line for." So, sticking his leg up on it, he would say, "To find the All Blue." Zoro, standing next to him, would say, "To become the greatest swordsman." Nami, sticking up her own leg as well, would say, "To draw a map of the entire world." Usopp would stick up his leg as well, a little bit nervously, and say, "To become a great warrior of the sea." Luffy, being last, would stick up his leg and say, "To become the Pirate King." But that is where I'm going to be leaving this part off at. So I'll see you guys in part 6, part 5. I definitely said that wrong. If you sticked around for this wrong, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next part. Peace out, and bye.